Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Allen Harris, host of Family Pictures USA. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this special event in honor of LGBTQ History Month. We have a special and a great we have a great lineup of special guests tonight who will be sharing their photographs and stories, including filmmakers Jenny Livingston and Arthur Dong and photographer Lola Flash. We're hosting this event with community media partners Third World Newsreel, a nonprofit media arts center promoting media by and about people of color and social justice issues, and the Documentary Forum at CCNY. This event is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts, NISCA, and DCA. We invite you to support the work of Family Pictures USA by clicking the link in the Facebook Live caption to make a donation. We love that. If you want to share your photos and stories celebrating LGBTQ history, because we all have that, including our allies, with our Family Pictures community, please join our Facebook group. The need to show and speak of our history and family stories as part of the rich diversity of American life and culture is more critical now than ever. Regardless of the political currents, queer lives and communities are always on the edge of marginalization by the culture at large. There is a long and proud tradition of LGBTQ and queer people of color marching in the vanguard for our rights just to be. We're continuing to celebrate our ancestors and shine a light on the new guard, moving us forward in a more just and equitable world with our special guest. First up is Arthur Dong, author and pioneering queer filmmaker whose films include License to Kill and Coming Out Under Fire, and who also has a new book, Hollywood Chinese. Arthur, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Thomas. I love your show. I'm honored to be a part of one of them.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to have you here. Tell us, what photograph did you bring first?
This is from 1970. It's actually a clipping from a 1970 gay paper in San Francisco called the Gay Free Press. And this is the first time one of my photographs was ever published. I was 16 years old. I had been taking pictures for about a year at this time, taking lessons in high school. And this photograph is actually a collage. In the back is, for those who know, that's Jean Harlow, a starlet from the 1930s, and I was a big fan of Jean Harlow. On the bottom, you see the Kodak film edge from the 35 millimeter film which I was developing, and you see a multi-exposure of me. So this was my self-portrait that I made in 1970, and the editor, who I was kind of dating, published this, and plus I think about 5 more other photographs.
And you were also out during this time.
I'm sorry?
You were also out during this time. It says Arthur is a gay 16-year-old.
Yeah, it's I was, when I found this again, I said, wow, I guess I was out. I mean, I had been gay for as long as I could remember, but I guess this was kind of an out thing. And it's kind of weird, actually. That was 50 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it seems like we have a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure why that is. We're going to echo. Let's go to the next photograph.
This is from my new book, Hollywood Chinese. And in the middle is Esther Rayne. She was born and raised in San Francisco, and she was born in 1914. And when she was just 22, she made her first film in Hollywood. And she continued to make about 8 or 10 films, both here in San Francisco and in Hong Kong. And she did it as an open lesbian. And it's just amazing that she did this in the 30s. And I profile her in my book. With her,
How did you know she was queer?
I'm sorry?
How did you know she was queer?
Just from the research and articles and people who work with her, and the articles of that time in her era, gossip columns, particularly in Chinese, that says yes, she romanced her stars. She just walks. She dresses in manly clothes, and she just was totally open. And I found it astounding that she did this in San Francisco Chinatown in the 30s in the Chinatown Chinese community, and no one really, as far as I could tell from the research, bat an eyelash. And she just did this until, in fact, she died in 1970, and she became a restaurateur in New York City. She opened various restaurants in Chinatown, and there was a book where she's referenced. Then the author says, "Oh yeah, I remember Esther. We used to go to her restaurant. Her girlfriends would manage the place, and it's just an astounding story." So, and really reminds me that there are just so many stories in history that we don't know about.
Well, thank you for this great work. Let's go to the next slide.
This is Jackie Mai Ling, and this is from my first book, Forbidden City, USA, about Chinatown nightclubs in the 40s during World War II. And he was a dancer, but what you see there is him in drag. And he performed infrequently in drag. In fact, he told me that he once performed at Finocchio's in the early days. The Finocchio's is kind of, they called themselves female impersonators at that time, but it was a pretty well-known nightclub that actually crossed over to the mainstream and where it was quite popular with people who wanted to see female impersonators as a show. But I it was really interesting when I met Jackie. I met him in 1985 in my research, and he just reminded me of this gay uncle that I never had. He has just wonderful stories about being gay in the 1940s. He didn't want that to be part of the documentary, but he openly talked about it. So, and it reminded me that gay people from that generation weren't, when they were open in a different kind of way that we know ourselves to be out of the closet today. It's a different mindset, it's a different way of being in amongst the community as an openly gay person.
Wow. Yeah, things changed so significantly. Let's go to the next photograph.
This is also from my book Forbidden City, USA, about the Chinatown nightclubs. This is Toyette Mar. And she was a singer, and she was the belter. She was they nicknamed her the Chinese Sophie Tucker, and I really love this photo of her, the older photo, because if you look closely, you see a bare light bulb in the corner there, and the background is like unfinished wood, and she's in this very butch outfit, which she never performed in. As far as I know, I've seen dozens of photographs of her performing, and she's never, as far as I know, performed in masculine clothing. It was always gowns and sequins. But here she is in this very butch outfit with a cigarette, and it doesn't look like, I'm making this up, but it reminds me of some underground lesbian bar behind secret doors. And I just love the photograph. And both the photograph, the contemporary photograph of her and Jackie Mai Ling, the previous one, the photographs that I took. And although I became a filmmaker, I continually took photographs. And I just couldn't, and whenever I would visit people for my films, I would photograph them as well.
Do they end up in your book as the photograph that you take as well?
Yeah, they're in my book. And my book is mostly the older photographs, but in their profiles, I include the contemporary photos that I took of them.
So they're part of the family.
Yeah,
And
and what's interesting is that they talked to me off camera about, but I recorded these interviews about gay life during the 40s, but they asked me not to put it in the documentary.
Wow.
So, but their stories are in the book, but again, with Toy, she lived in Fresno with her partner, and she called her a partner, but they were definitely a couple, and and it's interesting the way they live their lives, which is very different from gay people today who live their lives really out and unabashed. They led lives that were comfortable for them and within their own comfort zone.
Let's go forward with another photograph.
Okay, this is from Coming Under Fire, and I love this photograph. On the left is Alan Barabee, the author whose book I based the film on, Coming Under Fire, which is about gay and lesbian soldiers in World War II. In the middle is Sue Davis, who is a military veteran. That's me. And this is the picture, and that's Sue Davis. I'm sorry, Sarah Davis, not Sue Davis. It's Sarah Davis. And on the far right is Sarah Davis in the military during World War II. And I really like especially for what we're doing here, because I've seen your shows before and I've seen your website, and the photograph of us reminds me of the photographs you have with you and your subjects. Just looking over old photographs of people's personal histories and pulling them out and making them a part of a larger history, which is Sarah's story as a veteran of World War II.
Yeah, it's so important that we as storytellers bring these archives out and celebrate people who have stories behind them, and especially our queer ancestors or our ancestors who are people of color whose stories are not part of the mainstream.
Yeah, and and it's the same thing with Sarah as with Toya and Mar and Jackie Marlene. They led gay lives within the comfort zone of their times. And that was a learning curve for me as a younger person than them, to realize that that they were open too. They were out of the closet too, but in a different way. Certainly not in the way I felt comfortable with in my own life, but they had their own standard. And for them to have struggled in their times and to actually have gay friends, lesbian friends, and to socialize amongst themselves, that was pretty, for them, radical for their time. And I really have to appreciate that in terms of historical context and timeline.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arthur. We have one last photograph.
Oh, we have two more, I think.
Oh, two more. Okay.
This is almost the last. This is one of my favorite photographs. This is when I was working on the PBS series, The Question of Equality. And I was in charge of producing and directing the first episode, which focused on Stonewall. And this is a photograph of me and Sylvia Rivera. Sylvia Rivera was I think in her time, they called themselves drag queens. And I'm not sure what she would call herself today if she was still alive. She passed away, I think, in 2002. But this was the march celebrating Stonewall in New York City, the 25th anniversary.
And she was part of that history too.
Yeah, and she was one of the first participants at Stonewall. And I had just interviewed her. I was just about to interview her for the documentary, which is how we came to know each other. And this march. There were 3 marches that year because they couldn't figure out what to do because there was still so much in community fighting or disagreements. So there were 3 marches. There was the kind of the Main Street March that year, and there was the Dyke March, and then there was at that time, I'm not sure what terminology they used, but I think they called it the Drag March. And the Main Street March didn't want the other 2 groups in the Main Street March. So they all 3 marched like parallel on different streets. And well, I joined the drag street, the drag queen march, of course. And and working on, that was so emblematic of the conflict that I was trying to explore in the documentary of Stonewall, in that the different communities within the gay community at that time there was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of disagreements in terms of people of color, whether you were a drag queen, whether you're transgender, and whether you were a white male. I mean, they all had disagreements, and it was interesting because those were the issues that I focused on in the documentary. And when we actually had the showing, We had the premiere showing in New York City. I think it was NYU, the one of the larger auditoriums at NYU. After the screening, they were still arguing. It was like, and I think they're still arguing today.
Well, listen, we have one last photograph. And so tell us this last photograph. It looks like a wedding picture.
Well, this is my wedding. Well, our wedding, not just mine, but our wedding. And this is in 2008 in California, when there was a small window of time that we were allowed legally to get married. I forget what the legal parameters were, but there was a big threat that we were allowed to get married. I don't remember the specifics, but there was only a few months window. So we took that advantage of that window. And what you see there on the lower right, on the lower left is our son, and he was our ring boy. And then my husband Young and myself in the middle. And Judy Chu, Congressman Judy Chu, is in purple. And this was her first gay wedding that she officiated. And
wow.
And next to her is Amy Hill, the actress. And then her daughter in the lower right corner. And this is, instead of doing vows, we didn't do traditional vows because it was kind of silly for us. We had a kind of a Q&A. And this is a moment when we were doing I guess it was a funny moment because
it looks like we were singing.
No, we were answering a question. I forget. I have to look at the videotape to see what question we were answering. But you can see that Amy and Judy have paper in their hands. They had a list of questions they were going to ask us. And I guess it was, I have to look it up and see what question they were asking.
Well, Arthur, thank you so much for sharing some of your family album and family from your archives with us today, helping us build a queer family album.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm glad that it's all part of the larger picture.
It's so great to have you here.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay. So our next guest is actually Lola Flash, a photographer whose work focuses on social, LGBT, and feminist issues that document and celebrate LGBT lives, and was also featured in the film Through a Lens Darkly, Black Photographers and the Emergence of a People. Lola, welcome. Hey, how are you? You're muted.
I'll try that again.
I can hear you.
All right.
And it seems like my echoes disappeared too.
Yeah, that sounds better. I helped you.
So welcome, Lola. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, and it's really great to be working with you again.
Yeah. So tell us, what's the first photograph you brought that you're going to tell us about?
I wanted to talk about pride. Sorry about the siren going by.
No problem.
Because
for me, the photograph from Pride. Which Pride?
I would say maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Is it in the West Village?
Yeah, it's in the West Village. I was in that area where they have the little sort of market area. And I was sort of, I think I was on my way to my friend Afua's house. She always has a party every year. She lives in Westbeth.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just
balcony.
Yeah, I was on my way there, and I saw these two, and I was just like, do you mind if I take a picture? And they were like, fine. They posed. So, you know, for me, pride is always, well, throughout my life, I sort of gone in and out of just being super excited about pride, and then not so surprised, I suppose, just whatever's going on in my own mind. But it is a really wonderful time to celebrate us all and to be able to see all the different kinds of queer folk that there are out there, you know, and feel like us people of color really show up, you know. So I thought I wanted to include a little bit of that because that is part of my family.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next photograph. Wow, so sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I see the world through rainbow colored glasses. You know, check out my view, you know. So I generally tend to do some pictures of you know, the parade, and then since I am a portrait photographer, I often will try to, you know, stand near an area where I can like get a nice background and photograph people on their own.
How long have you been photographing Pride?
Oh gosh, I don't know, since the 80s, I guess. I mean,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, my first Pride in New York, I think, was probably 83 or 84. And I think that's also one of the things that I like about Pride, because I think about how I felt my first Pride. And I
mhm.
think about like every Pride there is, people, there's always someone who's, it's their first Pride and feeling nervous. I remember thinking like, well, back in those days, they didn't televise Pride.
Uh-huh.
And you if someone was home, you'd say, "Oh, did you see anything on the news about Pride?" And of course, they hadn't.
No, and it was before streaming as well, so you wouldn't see it, anywhere. You had to have been there. Speaking of seeing, I love your glasses. Are those LA Eyeworks?
I have to. All of my glasses are except for this pair.
Okay, mine are LA Eyeworks. They're one of our sponsors actually, and I love them.
I love them too. I have a whole like amazing collection of
Collection. Let's go to the next photograph. Wow. Now, is this from the series Surpassing? Is this your Surpassing series, or is this a series that came after that?
Yes, this came after that. This is Surmise. So Surmise focuses on genderqueer folks, and it looks at sort of the disturbing representation, or really misrepresentation of our community. So, sort of in plain talk, it's about people who are gender fluid, and for some reason, society always feels the need to put us in a box. Myself personally, I mean, all my series are about myself, and personally, for instance, when I go to the bathroom, the ladies are like up in arms, and they're like, "You're in the wrong bathroom," and they're really mean to me, and at that point, I'm not being I'm not thinking about my politics. I'm just thinking about my physical needs.
Yeah.
And I mean, that this has happened all my life in every country I've ever been to. I remember in Germany, this lady was saying "Fräulein, Fräulein," and I was just like, I am a Fräulein, and it's, we can laugh about this situation because it's not going to change. I mean, it might kind of mess up my day or my moment, but it's not going to change my bank account.
Mhm.
And now I'm so happy that there are gender fluid bathrooms in many places. But as far as I'm concerned, unless you're going to date someone, it doesn't really matter what gender they are, what sexuality they are. And so it started off me photographing queer folks. And then there's two of my friends who are straight, but because they have a lot of queer friends, whenever they hang out with their queer friends, people always think they're gay. So there's kind of this association, which is kind of like, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm kind of playing around with that and hoping that eventually people will get to a point where they just kind of see the love in our hearts.
Let's go to the next photograph. So this is actually something different now. This is a different body of work.
Yes, for sure. I always say that each model is like a little part of me. Like when I see someone, I see this little gem of me inside of them. So it's almost all of them feel in a way like self-portraits. So Salt is about older women. They're all over 70, and it's about seeing their beauty. These women all are, Norma, actually, oddly enough, both of these women have passed. But before they passed, Norma on the left-hand side, she lived in Puerto Rico. You can tell by the flag. This is her home. I mean, I walked in and I was just like, I know where we're going to shoot. Sometimes I say, where do you usually hang out at? And, some people choose the kitchen or whatever, but that was just made for a photograph. She was a singer and she made an incredible cookbook. She was also a painter.
I love her little doll there in the corner. I mean, the whole wall is gorgeous.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then on the right-hand side, we have Tony Parks, who is Gordon Parks' daughter.
I met in the 80s, actually, 80s and 90s. A phenomenal lady.
Totally. She was a real firecracker. And, you see there on her mantle, herself and her father. There's also a little pen, Obama pen. And this was taken in her home in Torquay, in England. I miss both of them. But, the thing is that me as a female thinking about like what I'm going to be like when I grow up, so to speak, and also just thinking about the way the society, they sort of love women when they're like 18 to 28, and then they kind of push those women aside and bring in a whole new host. Whereas someone like George Clooney, who I think is handsome, but you know, we don't have a lot of women who have that kind of like, society doesn't see the beauty, right? You don't see an older co-star with a female with a younger man. You know what I mean? You always see the opposite, these gray-haired guys with these young girls, and you know, and so it's about reminding these women about their beauty. So like that 2 hours that I'm with them, I'm like, I'm here, I'm Lola Flash, and I'm photographing your beauty. Because I think that sometimes they forget, you know.
Beautiful. Let's go to the next photograph, which I think is another body of work. This is you on the left, on the right rather, and on the left.
Yeah.
So tell us about this project.
So this is a new series, my latest series called Syzygy, the Vision, and it's referencing Afrofuturism, thinking about creating a future that is equitable. You know, basically, for those who don't know, Afrofuturism has been around forever. People like Sun Ra, you know, some of the original people, George Clinton, Missy Elliott, you know, and so we as Black and Brown folks weren't able to write our stories, and then those stories that you read were often left out or sort of misaligned, and so the beauty, the excitement about Afrofuturism for me is that, you know, I can take those past stories and the present stories and kind of reweave them and create this kind of beautiful and not perfect future, because I don't think there's anything I don't think things are perfect, but I think that for me, what I see what would be perfect for me would be an equitable society.
And I love the water in the background and the open cuff, you know, freedom. So the last two images are family images. So who is in these two? Who are these two folks?
Well, Thomas, that's me on the right hand side.
With long hair.
Yeah, with long hair and a dress. And that's my beautiful mom, who was a teacher, a principal. You know, she and my dad gave me the love of education. You know, I'm a lifetime learner, and they gave me my manners. And so, you know, this picture shows Mom and I kind of dressed alike. She used to like to dress us alike. I wish I could find the picture of us with these dashiki dresses on, like from the 70s, that I used to love to wear. But to be honest with you, this is probably one of the last pictures that I actually had a dress on, you know, because I told my mom, like, I think as soon as I was able to form a sentence, that I didn't like wearing dresses, you know, and she was like horrified. She's like, you know, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that, you know. And so my parents,
like around 5, 6?
I'm thinking even younger, you know, really did not like dresses. And you know, and my dad would just take me straight to, we go shopping. I wouldn't have to fluff around the girls' department. My dad would take me straight to the boys' department, and I would buy my jeans and my, you know, my overalls and, you know, my plaid shirts. And, you know, for me, you know, now I suppose I say that I wear masculine clothes. But for me, this is the kind of woman that I am. And so I think a lot of people often misgender me because of the way that I dress, and that's understandable. But I think, you know, there's a lot of people who are trans who actually feel like they were born in the wrong body, right? They want to change to the other gender. But for me, it's all about like exploring like what my terms are around being a woman. And so yeah, so it's I suppose thinking too about the family, you know. When your family is behind you, it just makes all the difference in the world, because I never had any problems with thinking like I was weird or strange. You know,
exiled from your family. Yeah. Or exiled from your family.
Yeah,
because of your self-expression. Yeah,
no.
because you're expressing who you were. So let's go to the last photograph. And you can continue. So this is a photograph of a famous person in here, or two famous people, right? Three. There's well, in the center is Booker T. Washington, and is that Madam C.J. Walker on the left?
That is, yes.
And then who else is in here that we should know?
well, you should know my great grandfather,
Where is he?
Charles H. Bullock. He's the one with the mustache,
In
and
there?
far to the right.
Far to the right. Okay.
Yes, and he was responsible for found one in Brooklyn, one in Montclair, and Louisville, Kentucky, I think. And at the time they were called the colored wise. So that was during segregation. This photograph is from about 1920, and I think that they were probably there. The other folks were probably there because they probably donated some money towards the building of the YMCA's. And so my grandfather went around the country, you know, making these, founding these YMCA's. And, you know, from what I hear in Montclair, I know they were kind of like the meccas for Black and brown people. You know, there was no place for them to go. They learned how to read. They learned how to swim. Many people were able to get scholarships, you know, and it was a place where they could actually commune, you know, as like just kind of normal everyday people rather than feeling so alienated where they did in most places. So, you know, we're really proud. My family, and I know some of them are watching. Hi, Charlene, and some of my friends. It's, you know, that's also my family's, my friends, and, you know, those people I don't know and those people who are here for me all the time. But, you know, I think that having a great grandfather like that for us and our family, the Bullock family, you know, it's like he passed this baton down to us, you know, and so it's this legacy that says, like, my great grandfather in 1920 knew that we deserved more, that we deserved a more equitable future. And I can't say that more, you know, enough. And so for me, you know, in this 21st century, I feel it's important for me to carry that torch and to wave it proud, you know. And so it's yeah. And I always say, if you don't have someone in your family that has created that legacy, then maybe you're the person that's going to create that legacy for the people to come from, you know, to come.
Ashe.
You know what I'm saying?
Ashe. I love it. Thank you. It's like, I love ending with that photograph of service and pride, and also acceptance and leadership, and all of which you embody with your work. Lola, love you.
Thank you. Love you too, sweetheart. Thank you.
Okay, so our next guest is Jenny Livingston, a dear friend and an award-winning filmmaker whose groundbreaking film, Paris is Burning, was included in the film registry at the Library of Congress in 2016 and was released by the Criterion Collection in 2020. And I was part of that release. I did a Q&A with some of the cast members of the film. Jenny, welcome. You're muted. You're muted.
Folks, and those pictures is really exciting, and I'm honored.
It's so great to have you here. So where are you hailing from right now?
Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. Okay. And
I've left for a long time now.
I know this COVID thing is so intense, and it's getting more intense right now. So I'm really happy, like, you know, that we are all coming together to allow one another to see, you know, ourselves in these spaces, but also beyond the spaces through our photographic albums and collections. And you have an image the first image, which takes us back to the 80s, right?
Yeah, so all the images I'm going to show today are from the film I'm making now, Earth Camp 1, which is a first-person film, kind of a memoiristic film. It's about loss and how I lost a lot of family members, but also larger circles of loss and how we deal with loss collectively. And in this case, in activism. I was a young photographer making my first film, but also an activist with ACT UP. And as everyone knows, you know, the AIDS crisis started with the gay male population and queer population, and people rose up to say, you know, no, the President of the United States should say the name AIDS, and, you know, we can't just say, well, so what if people are dying? It's in a community we being, you know, the mainstream, not me, but don't care about. And so ACT UP was very, very effective in making people see the images. And also, you know, Dr. Fauci, who is always in the news now. I mean, those of us who were AIDS activists then remember Dr. Fauci because we called him out and he listened. You know, he listened as a public health official.
Mhm.
So I was photographing at that time, and it was moving to photograph what I was part of.
Yeah, it was also during that time because I think around that time we met, and there was a lot of like exchange, thinking about what Arthur mentioned earlier, between like dykes and fags, right? There was a lot of like people, women were supporting gay men who were like fighting, who were principally the ones who were suffering from AIDS and HIV at that time. And so in thinking about this that what Arthur mentioned about the different parades, we've gone apart, and I think in some ways are coming back together perhaps.
Well, and also wanted to say I directed an episode of the show Pose, where in that script, which I did not write, I just directed it. There were some ball kids who get involved with ACT UP and go to an action, but that's sort of total poetic license that never happened. I mean, I'm not saying everybody in the ball world or everybody in ACT UP, but I did not know one single person who straddled both worlds. They were very different worlds, and the people like Larry Kramer who founded ACT UP were white men with a lot of education and privilege who felt entitled to say, you have to pay attention to us. We thought we were going to die in our beds at old age, and now we're not. Please, let's pay attention and cure this disease.
Let's move to the next photograph.
So that's also ACT UP. And these pictures, it's funny, I shot them back in the 80s. They were like sitting in cans of film, not processed until, like 5 years ago. And, that's a man, ACT UP activist, being arrested. It speaks for itself. I mean, this is happening now.
Images from Portland or other places. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that era when people were putting our bodies on the street speaks to this moment, and I think speaks to the necessity of we need to do that. This still changes minds, and it changes hearts, and it certainly creates imagery for us to go out and say, we will not conscience these oppressive systems that allow people, or even deliberately, allow people to die or kill people.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next photograph.
Okay, so this is coming up to last year, and this is a family picture. You can see me on the right. I didn't take this picture. I handed my camera off to a court official. The two people in the middle holding the baby, the person on the left holding the baby's hand is Christabel, who is someone I was in a relationship with for 9 years, back in the 90s and, up until 2004. And that is her wife, Amy. And, Christabel and I shared a genderqueer and or trans identity, when we were youngsters and together. And, what's so wonderful about queer families, and it's of course true of non-queer families, but it's special in our queer families that we may change our relationships. It's been a long time since we were a couple. I'm partnered with my partner, Margaret, now, but, we have these families that go on and on and on. This is last year. This is at the Brooklyn courthouse. And that was the adoption finalization of my godchild, Royal.
Wow. Let's see the photograph again. So that's Royal in the center. And then
Christabel is on the left of Royal. Amy is holding Royal, and that's some of their extended family. And, we're there, and they have to go through the paperwork and sign the things. And it's very moving. And I think for our generation, Thomas, the people I know my age who are parents of now grown children, they had to really imagine that into being. It's younger queers can take that for granted, but it was not accepted for our generation to be parents.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let's go to congratulations on your godchild. Let's Royal. Let's go.
We had a second birthday party in Fort Greene Park, during the shutdown. As the shutdown was opening up. This is my uncle Alan J. Pakula. He married my aunt when I was 11 years old. Her first husband died.
The filmmaker.
Fell in love. He directed Sophie's Choice, All the President's Men, The Parallax View, and he was a wonderful mentor. And this was, when I was a young filmmaker and I said, I want to be a filmmaker. And he said, don't do it. It's so hard, do anything else. But if you must, you must. And he gave me my first paying job on film. I was in a PA, lowly PA in the art department. And this was on the street. They were shooting on the street a film called Orphans that Albert Finney starred in. and Matt McGee. And all the crew had animal noses on. I don't know why. Somebody passed them out, and every single crew member had an animal nose. And so I lifted my camera, and he kind of made this jokey, like, I'm the director framing a shot gesture with the rabbit nose on. But he's also in my film. And, in my film, I lost 5 family members in 4 years, and he died in an accident in '98 very suddenly. And, the loss was, I mean, how many people who are filmmakers or artists are lucky enough to have, people in their family? My mom was a writer who published many books. She was a great mentor. But, I was just so lucky to have him in my life.
Mm-hmm. And
he was very accepting of my queer identity in a way that, wasn't always true in my family. And, I love the work he did, and I wish he were here today.
Mm-hmm. Is a lot of this in your new film? Is this narrative, or is there another narrative?
All in the film. Every single picture that I'm showing today is part of the trajectory of the film, which is my story and my family, but then also some larger social and political things that were part of my life and our world.
So it's an essay film, a meditation.
Yep. Great. And very much inspired by your film, That's My Face. In Minyakara. I mean, when I saw that film of yours, it was really inspiring. I was like, he's poetic. It's in the first person. It's political and spiritual and familial. And so I got to say that.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Let's go to the next photograph.
So,
wow.
This
is like a film still.
Yeah. So I was a young photographer running around, wanting to be Henri Cartier-Bresson or Diane Arbus or, all those people who were running around taking quote unquote street photographs. And this was just one day, Midtown Manhattan, in the 80s. I don't know who that guy is, but, when you come from a more marginalized identity, if you're queer, if you're genderqueer, even if you're Jewish, obviously if you're Black and brown or indigenous, you see this, you think about the center in relation to your identity. You see the center as people in the center do not always see it. And so, this guy, he could be the president of the United States today, right? I mean, so, and the picture, it's what photography does, right? It's a little bit poetic. Maybe he just lit that car on fire with a cigarette, who knows? The thing that the camera captures. And so I wanted to show it because it will be in the film, but also it's very much a part of like how I looked at New York and how I looked at the world as a young photographer, thinking about the structures, that inform and create and inhibit our lives.
And again, very cinematic. Next photograph.
So this is the last picture I wanted to show. This was taken with obviously my phone, and I wanted to give a shout out to, what our phones are doing for us as filmmakers and photographers. You have it in your pocket, you can do it. Margaret, my partner, and I went to Hawaii last summer, and I'd never been to Hawaii. Hadn't been on vacation in a really long time. It wasn't a work trip.
Good for you.
Everywhere in Hawaii is the Hawaiian language, and it's easy for people who aren't indigenous to walk around North America and not think about the people who preceded us and are still here. But in Hawaii, the language is Hawaiian. We also went to a protest kind of ceremony ongoing for many, many months up in Mauna Kea. Some indigenous people, some Native Hawaiians are saying we don't want a 14th big telescope built on our sacred ground. It's not, it's not a monolith that all Native Hawaiians feel that way, but many do. And it just made me think about, what we have to think about as North Americans, and Hawaiians are thinking about it there. What debt do we owe to the people who live here, who preceded us, and what can we as storytellers or as allies do to think about that? And then also I wanted to show this picture because many of us are not going anywhere. Most of us are not going anywhere. And it makes me think, it's one world, all these flags, we are as a world are getting through this pandemic, and we will be moving around the world, hopefully in a positively transformed, world when we get on the other side.
Yeah. Also, that it is one world. I mean, we're here on the earth, and we're the stewards of this planet. And it sustains us, and we have to sustain it. And as opposed to this the concepts of national identity or with other kinds of identities. This connection to the Mother Earth.
Exactly.
I loved about that image as well. Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me as part of this event, Thomas. It's so amazing.
It is wonderful to have you here. Another marker in our long relationship. Thank you for helping create this queer global family album.
My honor and pleasure.
I look forward to the film. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so our next guest is Jay Clapp. And Jay Clapp is also known as Vivica C. Cox, a pioneering drag performer and activist who brings together drag, art, and social justice in order to create an inclusive environment for the LGBT community and family. Jay, welcome. And Jay, you're muted. You're muted. So Jay was also featured in our series Family Pictures USA in North Carolina because you and your family are tearing it up there and charging it forward. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you today?
I'm doing good, thank you. So
Thank
Jay,
you for having me.
you're speaking from North Carolina, correct, right?
Yes, I am. I'm sitting in the exact living room you were in when you were filming Family Pictures USA with us down here.
Wonderful. Southern hospitality. You made us feel so much at home. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. My home is your home whenever you come.
So what's the first photograph we're going to look at today?
Well, I think our first photograph here is actually of civil rights activist Paulie Murray, who grew up here in Durham, North Carolina. And we're super proud of Paulie because to have such rich Black LGBTQ plus history here in the South, in what I consider my hometown, is just so magical because Paulie was the first really Black Episcopal woman priest in the nation, and to be from Durham, North Carolina, to have the education that Paulie has, and to have been an integral part of the civil rights movement is just so inspiring. And to know that also as a legal scholar, that Paulie helped shape the Brown v. Board decision and was essential in that progress. So if you're ever in Durham, North Carolina, for those viewers who aren't familiar with Durham, when you walk around, there are just murals of Paulie Murray's face everywhere here because this, there you go. Yes.
Yale grad, right? Went to Yale Law School.
Yes.
I don't think Harvard did not accept. I don't think Harvard was accepting women at the time, or some other places she had applied. And I'm teaching at Yale right now, so that might be someone that's connected to one of my classes or not. Anyway,
maybe. Well, Paulie was rejected from UNC Chapel Hill for law school. Actually, went to Howard for law school and got a PhD in legal science from Yale.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Was the first Black woman to do so. But what's funny is that Paulie is oftentimes referred to as a woman, but if you read the documents of Paulie's life, you'll see that Paulie would have identified differently in 2020, and that we don't know the exact terms that Paulie would have chosen, but references to "I want to marry a woman, but not as another woman" were used in her writings. And that was always so powerful to know that during the civil rights movement, someone we might identify as trans today was leading the charge.
And at the same time helped create the National Organization for Women at one point as well. So, I mean, talk about intersectional, just
Absolutely.
Hero.
Yes. Well, someone who's behind the scenes really making things happen. If you look at the Wikipedia page, you'll just see it all. But yes, it's so wonderful.
Yeah, I just read the biography that was written, "Song in a Weary Throat." So powerful. I mean, it was like this thick, but I could not stop. It was really, really powerful. And I went to actually read "The Shoes in the Bed." I'm spacing the name of her biography, one of her first biographies. But let's go to your next photograph. So who's in this photograph?
Literally everyone. Everyone is in this photograph. This is a good representation of what I call family. I run the House of Cox. I'm the drag mother. I'm the matriarch, and we are a social justice oriented drag family. And we produce shows. And these folks are performers and our partners. And as you can see, my grandchild is in someone's belly in this photograph. And I love my little grandchild. I'm so pleased that I can help raise this little baby. But yes, this is the House of Cox and our partners. And we just went out for a movie night, and it was the most adorable moment ever because there were so many of us. We took up almost the whole theater.
I love seeing all the love and happiness and joy in that photo.
Yes, we kind of love each other, and it's just a really magical notion to have a drag family because not everyone in the photo had a supportive family at home, and this is basically us recreating family. And to follow, Jenny is kind of poetic right now because what we are doing is based off of work that's been happening for decades.
Let's go to the next photograph, and I want you to tell me about socially engaged drag, which is what you do. So
Yeah.
people can look at that, and you have this image, which is a fantastic image, but also there's like stuff, the messages that are coming from the stage are also really
Right. There's just so much happening because it wasn't a coordinated performance, separate performances, and we just came together for a group photo at the end. But you can see my children, my eldest daughter with her arm up, Anita, me in the middle, and our pit crew in the front. And we provide a wide array of types of entertainment, but at the center of it is racial justice, gender equality, and consent. We want to have nightlife where everyone, regardless of your body, is able to enter and have a good time without fear of violation of your boundaries or anything like that. And so we actually use our pit crew, as you'll see, very, very naked in the front, as an avenue or a resource to demonstrate what consent looks like so that people can see that you can be very sexy and still have your boundaries respected. And it brings me a lot of joy to be on that stage. Haven't been on it since March, but it brings me a lot of joy.
Don, close that. Let's go to the next photograph. We had some noise in the background, so I just got distracted, but let's go to the next photograph. So now this looks like you guys are at home during Christmas.
Yes, we are celebrating the holidays here. I just love this photo so much. I could not put it in. Because look at how adorable we are.
Absolutely. And the baby's come.
Yes, the baby was born in this photo, so I'm like really pleased.
What's
and
the
I'm as
baby's
close
name?
to that baby as possible.
What's the baby's name?
Juniper.
Juniper. Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that photo.
I know. It is the most adorable. We are such a family. We got people from all over, and it's just so wonderful to have come together as this ragtag group. And it's not all about the performance. A lot of it is about these moments where we can recreate family photos that we might not have from our childhood.
Are you guys characteristic of Durham and North Carolina? Is this what people would find when they came down there? Because a lot of people, like in North Carolina, they banned the third bathroom or new bathroom.
You're talking about HBC. Yes, a lot of people assume that because we're in North Carolina that we're in this place where we can't be happy and have full lives. But if you come to Durham, North Carolina, and we've talked about this before, what you saw in that image is what you would see in town. Durham is an exceptionally progressive place. I promise you, in this election, we will be going 80 to 90% blue in the whole county, not just the city. The whole county will be going 80 to 90% blue because we're such a progressive and radical city. We made national news because the queers here toppled Confederate monuments before it was cool, because there was just a series of them for a while. But we were toppling Confederate monuments. We were telling the KKK, not in Durham. The KKK canceled their rally because we were like, we're not the city for that. And it is just such a powerful place to be. It really is.
Beautiful. Let's go to the next photograph.
I believe this is my last photo, and the best I could do was this copy of the photo because my family history is complicated and I don't have all of my childhood photos anymore. But this is an image of my mother holding myself and my brother when we were itty bitty. And yes, I've had red hair since I was a baby. This is not dyed. And
I see that.
yes, and I just love this photo so much, but mostly because, as you know, Thomas, this is a photo of my brother who was murdered by police back in 2017. And I will not stop showing his face, saying his name, and reminding people that there are people who used to be little children who have been murdered by police. And that is a part of my story. That is a part of my family's history. And that is something I'm not going to shy away from. But Christopher was his name, is so essential in my life today. It fuels me to live a full and happy life because he no longer can.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Of course.
Thank you for sharing your family with me once again, and I'm so glad we're heart connected. And tell everyone I send my love, and thank you for helping us to enlarge our queer family album, bring it home to the South.
Yes, I'm very happy to represent the queers in the South whenever possible because there are so many of us.
Okay, be well, and I'll speak to you soon.
Be well.
Bye-bye. So our next and final but not our least guest, last but not least guest is CQ Quintana. Christina Quintana. CQ is a queer writer with Cuban and Louisianan roots whose plays have been developed and produced across the country. Welcome, CQ.
Hello, I'm so honored to be here among the legends. This is no joke.
And you too. I mean, we met the other day in North Central Park, and we both had masks on. So I think if we passed each other on the street without masks, I don't think we'd recognize each other. You had a hat on too.
Luckily, we have the glasses. That's the helpful. It's always helpful. I was also, when y'all mentioned the iWorks thing, I've heard when I was in LA, everybody was like, "That's where you need to go to get glasses." Everybody.
LA iWorks.
LA iWorks. That's it. Yeah.
So let's see the first photograph that you brought.
Yeah. So, we were talking about obviously queer histories that are meaningful. I was thinking about Alice Dunbar Nelson, the poet and activist. And really, thanks to the Academy of American Poets, poets.org, I first came along Alice Dunbar Nelson's work, and which is remarkably queer. I mean, she lived 1875 to 1935. She was a biracial woman. She was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. And her work is just so, she has this one poem in particular called You, Inez, which is just one of the most beautiful love poems to another woman that I've ever read. And it's, she was married to two men, actually. Paul Dunbar, as a lot of people know, the poet. And even her relationships to men were kind of notably queer, which is pretty amazing, especially for a woman of that time. And so I kind of loved what Lola was saying earlier, because I think just sort of the expansion of what queer is there's so much to what it means to be queer, right?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I love, there's a book that was written about her, and it was called Lyrics of Sunshine and Shadow. It was actually about their relationship and also about her. And it was so moving. A friend of mine, Felicia, tuned me into it, and I read it maybe about 10 years ago. It's a lovely book.
I will absolutely check that out. Thank you for the reference.
Let's go to the next photograph.
So this photo is
it's like a wedding photo.
It is. That amazing suit, which you can kind of see, was actually designed by two incredible fashion designers, Darren George and Renat Brodach. That was my gift, my wedding gift from them. And I chose this photo just because it's just so much joy. And we got married in Asbury Park because it's super queer. We could get married on the beach. And one of my favorite things about our wedding day, honestly, was we stepped off of the beach, and there was this lesbian couple, and they looked at us and they just said, "Congratulations, we've been together for 30 years. And it was just this incredible moment. It gets me teared up now, even thinking about it. And so that's
Like
our
a blessing from the angels, right?
Yeah, it really was just like the most beautiful moment. So yeah, so that's our family. That's our chosen family.
I
Right there.
love it. And everyone's like, they feel, it looks like they were about, it feels like a bird about to take off, right?
Yeah,
Almost
totally. We're all just like, it just like that photo brings me such joy. So and
Yeah.
what a gift that day was. We've been thinking so much, when we just had our 2-year anniversary, and just with everything with COVID going on, like,
Yeah.
what a gift to be able to get married in person with everyone there,
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not possible right now, during this time. Yeah. Well, congratulations on the recent anniversary.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next photograph.
So this photo is actually a still from my play Azul, which actually had its world premiere at Southern Rep in 2019, which was super exciting because that was my home theater. I grew up in New Orleans, and so when they actually made the decision to produce the play, it was huge. And the play is actually, for me, I thought very significant for this conversation, because my entire family is Cuban. My parents were from opposite sides of the island. And I searched so hard for particularly stories about queer women in Cuba on the island. And so when I couldn't find them, I made one up. And I'm very lucky that I actually do have, some queer men who are in my life, who are in my family. But so this story in a lot of ways is about, a queer legacy, and follows a couple both in, a Cuban American woman, a Puerto Rican woman who are married, and this journey back to the island. And so that's actually a scene from the play when they go back to Cuba, when they go to Cuba.
Now
Yeah.
how did your family get to Louisiana as opposed to Miami? I know, not to be cliche.
No, not at all. No, not at all. It's so funny. So both of which we can talk about, honestly. I think the next photo might be them, but
let's go to the next photo.
So this was 2015, actually. This was before my father passed away. It was their last trip to New York. So my parents, actually, both of their families immigrated to New York City. And I wanted to share this photo in particular because I think it's special that they visited my wife and I, before we were married, an apartment that is actually about 10 blocks from where they met. So they were actually from opposite sides of the island. My dad was from Havana and my mom was from Santiago de Cuba. And they met in high school. They lived on opposite corners of the street at Fort Washington and 161st Street. And so this photo it makes me smile. It's a kind of special image of, of where I came from,
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you had that, and I'm glad that your father and your mother both were able to celebrate, their union with you and your wife, and during that time, and that you documented that, and that's really beautiful, and they look like they're having a blast.
It was very lucky. It wasn't always easy with them, but it got to a place. Yeah.
With work. I see.
Both my family comes from it's like a medical background. So I was actually I was really loving what Jenny was saying about, how lucky to be able to have artists in your family. What a gift. But they came over. They're okay now. They were okay.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, CQ. So listen, what we're gonna do right now is we have one last image.
That's okay.
This is actually some new work. So let's go to this last image.
Oh yeah. So basically, this is just an image from I co-run this reading series called Bespoke. It's the Bespoke reading series. We've been actually running it since 2018. I run it with Tim Murphy, who is an author and a journalist, and Jerome Murphy, who's a poet. And it's an all genre, all queer reading series that normally, in non-COVID times, we operate out of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is in the center, the bookstore in the center. But in COVID times, and in COVID times, we actually decided to go virtual. And so since March, we've actually been doing, at least every other month, we've been doing these virtual events, and we've actually been doing them as fundraisers for mostly queer organizations, but all sorts of organizations. And as you can see, sort of Tim is taking the photo because he didn't know how to do a screenshot. But I wanted to share that because it felt like it's so a major part of my queer community.
How can people join?
Yeah. So you can actually visit at Bespoke Reading Series. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we always update about events. We should be coming. We wanted to wait post the election, so we should be having a new event in December.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Maybe I'll bring something to read, or, we could talk about that. Yeah.
We would love that. That would be amazing.
Fabulous. Yeah. So, CQ, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your wonderful energy and your new generation power.
It's been an honor. I've been like, oh my God, like what have I done? Jeez.
I can't wait to see one of your productions. So yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. So thanks everyone for being here. I don't see that many questions. I don't know, Quentin, did we get some questions that we want to bring up, or should we just close? Someone just said, okay, we could close. So I just want to thank you again, audiences who are watching this, and also thank every single one of our special guests. They were just amazing, from California, from North Carolina, from Louisiana, Cuba, New York, from old friends, new friends, etc. Thank you for joining us for this incredible gathering. If you missed a part of the event, it will be uploaded to our Family Pictures USA Facebook group and the Family Pictures USA and Third World Newsreel YouTube channels for the foreseeable future. As part of this screening, as part of this event, we also screen our film Marriage Equality, Byron Rushing and the Fight for Fairness. And that will be a screening. It's a short film, 17 minutes, around people of color who led the way towards marriage equality in the Massachusetts area. So that'll be screening for free until midnight tonight. And so make sure you take this opportunity to watch it. We'll leave a link in the stream in the comments below. If you want to support future events like this one and help Family Pictures USA continue to transform strangers into family, please consider making a donation using the link on our Facebook Live caption. Every month we do some kind of event, whether it's with archivists or it has a theme. Next month it's going to be military families and Thanksgiving. So speaking of thanks, I want to thank you so much, Third World Newsreel, our producing partner, and the Documentary Forum at CCNY, the Black Documentary Collective for co-sponsoring this event and being an invaluable partner to us in this work. Looking forward to the next one. Sending everyone a big kiss for LGBTQ history. Thank you.